I'm out in Lake Quinault Lodge right now, which is beautiful, and there's an amazing view right here that you probably can't see because if I change the light balance so you can see it, I'm just a black silhouette, which arguably would be an improvement. The thing I've been thinking about that I wanted to get down on video was I've been trying to step back from my current project a bit. This is a wonderful place to work, and I was trying to just sort of carry on with my work, and I found that much like when I started work at Stugan, that I didn't want to, it felt kind of claustrophobic to just stay within the small scale current task I was working on. Didn't feel like I wanted to work on that, so I've been trying to step back and sort of reassess everything. And so it's sort of coincidence really, but the thing I started the thing I'm prototyping right now, that I started thinking about a year ago, has ended up, I think, building on a lot of the things I learned at the end of Heat Signature, which was September. 9 months later I learned a bunch of stuff that then works as groundwork for the thing I was thinking about in January that year. And so specifically, I would summarize some of my lessons from Heat Signature as emergent gameplay is quite easy to create once you have a basic level of simulation. Heat Signature got to the point where I can add new interesting gadgets really quickly, and they keep adding to the complexity and the number of cool possibilities and the number of interesting solutions. It's a little bit harder to add good enemy types. Those take longer to come up with and longer to test, and it's more common for an idea not to pan out in that regard, but it's still not that difficult. I could have, there's more to be done there with even just within Heat Signature. Whereas Gunpoint, I got to the end of Gunpoint and for puzzle design in Gunpoint, I was just fucking done with it. I've done 20 puzzles, I don't have to do any more, I got no more ideas, I'm out. But gadgets are both easy and bountiful. There's just loads of them to think up, they're very easy to come up with, and they do genuinely add emergent stuff, unforeseen tricks and tactics, and enemies, harder to come up with, but still I don't feel like I hit my ceiling with those at all. I feel like there's loads more ideas to try and discover, and I think that's probably more of an experimental process. The other big learning from Heat Signature, which is totally new to me versus Gunpoint, was that pausing makes those possibilities explode. If the player can pause and take as long as they like to think about it, all of those potentially interesting solutions, all of those, the full size of all the options that are truly available to you, suddenly just rushes forwards in a way that never does in any real-time game, even with extensive slow motion, even with much better clarity than Heat Signature. There's just no real-time game where you have that kind of mastery over your options, where you can see that much of the possibility space. If you can pause, what you can do with an emergent system is just incredible. And then another thing I learned from Heat Signature was that not everyone does pause. We made great strides in persuading more and more people to pause more and more of the time, but we still didn't really get to the point where everyone does it. And it really just should. It really just makes everything way better. Both if you are struggling and having trouble even just with basic competence in the game, and if you are deep into it and brilliant at it and using all this cool stuff, even at that point, if you pause, you'll be seeing loads more cool things to do. And then actually another thing that this wasn't a lesson so much, it was something I was thinking about at the end of Heat Signature, was that I've successfully made a game where emergent stuff is possible, successfully made a game where emergent stuff is advantageous, it successfully pushes you to do emergent stuff, I think, in some situations for some players. It's pretty good at that. And then it occurred to me that the third step of that, which I didn't get to, is successfully onboard people who don't play emergent games in clever and interesting ways to the point where they do and can and want and will. Because I keep hearing people sort of doing themselves down and saying oh, I'm just not clever enough to think of these things. I just don't know how to do that. And I don't believe it's a lack of intelligence. I believe it's a barrier. There's some kind of block to it, to them getting in the right mind space, getting in the right kind of mode of the thing. You know Tetris vision, right? If you play Tetris for a long time, you start to see everything in Tetris as a Tetris problem. I think pretty much anyone can play Tetris. But the first time you play Tetris, I'm sure you just fumble around and screw it up because you're not in that mode. And so there are just modes of thinking, and players can be eased into them. And emergent games just don't bother. We just don't do it. Like, Heat Signature has a tutorial. We teach you, we tell you to do a few specific things, then we give you a little bit of freedom and then let you experiment a bit. But we still never really. I think the best tutorial for an emergent game would be almost like a puzzle game in itself. So you make like a 10 to 20 level puzzle game where in each case the solution basically is requiring the player to spot some hidden possibility or some interesting combination of what they have. And you heavily tutorialize the early ones, then you ease off and ease off and ease off until towards the end there's loads of possibilities and the player is just trusted to find their own. And then once you've done that, then you get to play the big randomized, totally open version like Heat Signature, where nothing is designed in Heat Signature; it's all just generated. And so this ends up, I think, tying into what I'm making. When I stepped back, I expected to kind of find, I'm going down the wrong path, I should do something else. But I think I found the opposite, which is the game I'm making is you have a small team of, let's call them agents, and you are breaching into rooms full of, let's call them gangsters. And the way I'm doing it is it's turn-based, but the way one turn works is you click on one of your agents, you tell them to do this, they go and do it right away, you see the effects of that. If it's to like punch a gangster, then they go and punch the gangster. Then when you click on another agent, we go back in time to before that your first agent did anything. So they still have the order to punch the gangster, but they haven't done it yet. And now you tell your second agent to do something, and as they go and do it, the first agent also goes and does what he did the first time. Which is, it's not quite how Frozen Synapse works, it's not quite how XCOM works, it's not quite how any of the sort of turn-based games I'm playing off work, but it's also not like an innovation or anything. It's a bit like that world in Braid where you cooperate with your past self, only it's very intentionally, we're not making a gimmick of it. It's not like, whoa, look, we're rewinding time. Isn't this crazy? This is just literally an interface for giving orders to multiple people who are then going to execute them simultaneously. And in particular, it's an interface for seeing how those orders play out. And so that right away feeds into, Heat Signature had emergent stuff. It let you pause, and if you did pause, it was really easy to do the emergent stuff. There was loads of really interesting possibilities that you found quite easily. The problem was not everyone did pause, and so here, just by doing turn-based, we are enforcing the pausing, right? We are making sure you can't not pause because the game will just stop. Like it's a turn-based game. That's probably why a lot of games with a lot of rich strategic possibilities are turn-based, because it gives you time to think. So nothing new or interesting, but it's neat that directly builds on what I learned from Heat Signature, which is, hey, pausing's great, not enough people are doing it. Going to turn-based makes a lot of sense. The simultaneous execution of those orders, I don't 100% know if I'll stick with it, but I like it right now. And I like it because the reason I wasn't planning on doing turn-based before now was that I don't like the artificiality of it. I don't like that this guy moves, then that guy moves, then that guy moves. There's no way to show you what situation that truly simulates. That isn't a simulation of any realistic situation. No one waits while the other people do their thing. So simultaneous would kind of fix a little bit of that. It's not actually simultaneous turn-based because I don't want the enemies to move while you're moving. They're going to sort of on their turn line up a bunch of shots and stuff, and then on your turn you do a bunch of stuff all at once. So it will still be a bit fake, but it helps a bit. And then teaching you emergence, that isn't sort of a core part of the plan yet, but I think that's what I will go towards, is having some tutorial levels working towards a state where the player where we're sort of asking you to find an emergent solution. Like, we'll design it so that there is some clever way out of this, and we'll just give you a situation where this is fucking impossible if you don't think of something clever, and maybe there's one or two different clever things that get your way out of it. And so that could be like level 3 of the tutorial, and levels 1 and 2 are where we actually tell you, hey, you're screwed unless you cast this spell, or unless you do throw this grenade, or unless you exploit this consequence of the mechanics that we're just going to tell you. We're just going to tell you what it is. And then on the third time, maybe one of those tactics works, but it's not, we don't point you to it this time. You have to sort of figure it out for yourself. And then there was one more thing about this that seemed really appropriate and cool. So I'm going to look it up before I continue, just in case it's not what I think it is. As I wrote all the stuff down. Hey, maybe you can see the view now. Maybe not. What did I write? I wrote that emergent gunning is easy and cool, but people don't pause enough, so enforce the pausing. And then, oh yeah, here it is. Yes, this is it. My God, this is the whole point. I forgot the whole point. The other thing that I've learned in general, partly from heat signature, partly from everything else, partly from other people's games, clarity is really, really hard. Really hard. Even when you focus on it as like number one priority, sometimes it's still the biggest problem with your game that you didn't do it well enough. That ties into emergence because something I've thought and believed and now seen is definitely true is that emergence hinges on the player knowing the rules. They have to know how the simulation works in order to think of clever plans. They have to know, oh, but if I did that, the guard's going to react in this way, and then that's going to happen. So they can have those ideas. And yeah, so clarity's hard, and like prediction is hard as well. No, telling the player, here's what will happen if you do that, is difficult in every way, but especially in user interface. Very hard to present that data, even if you can supply it. This ties into something that I noticed particularly with Shadwen. So you know from Braid's come up more than once in this discussion for good reason. The early levels of Braid, before any interesting time travel is introduced, there's just rewind. And it's a platformer where you're jumping over spikes and stuff, the kind that I don't normally like. But because you can rewind infinitely and for free and at any time, all of my problems with that genre are gone. Like, it's not just better, it's all problems are solved. There is no frustration. Equally, some of the things people like about that genre are gone as well, but I don't care about that because I was not into that genre in the first place. And it's remarkable how I jump into a pit of spikes. Oh well, I rewind 0.2 seconds and I'm safe, and I do it again and I get it right this time. And then I was playing Shadwen, which is a stealth game with rewind in it, which is a game that's in my game ideas list, is a stealth game with rewind, and now I don't have to do it because they did it. And it's amazing how fast and how easily you learn the rules of the simulation, the rules of stealth, the rules of all these complex things that are very hard to communicate and very high stakes, especially in a stealth game. If you misunderstand anything, you're just fucked. It's just over. Like, even if you're not dead, you're in combat. Dishonored will give you a lot of ways out once you're detected, but it's over. I don't want to play from that point. Yeah, I can run away and I can hide, but it's just messy and I fucked it up and it's just a disaster. You have to know how the simulation works so desperately. And Shadwen, you just find out by doing stuff. And when you do stuff and it doesn't work out the way you hoped, you just rewind 1 second, less than 1 second, sometimes at 0.25 seconds. And now you've learnt the rule, you're exactly where you were, you haven't lost immersion, you don't have to remember, you don't have to take stock of your surroundings and think, oh, where am I? How far back have I gone? It's just, you know how far back you've gone because you took yourself there. You just went, and now you have the knowledge, you can do exactly what you want to do, you have total... this is the smoothest, most pleasurable learning experience in games. It's so good. And so, my thing of that started as just here's a way to control multiple agents all at once, have them all do something at the same time, also works as a experimentation mechanic. So you tell them, because it's not just you click on this guy and you give him an order to go there, and that's drawn on the ground. He actually does it. So this agent told him to punch this gangster. You see him punch the gangster. You see if the punch is going to connect. You see if punching him is going to knock him out that window or if it's going to slam him into this wall, whether the angle is right. All this stuff that's very hard to predict, and even if we could predict it accurately, it's very hard to show you. And even if we could show you, the prediction algorithm we're running has to be in perfect sync with the true game mechanics. And if you're going to do that, why not just use the actual game mechanics? You're writing the code for this anyway. You're going to have these systems. They're going to have to work. So why not just run them and then let the player see what happens by actually having it happen and then rewind from there? So that's what I've got. That's what programmer on Heat Signature, John Winder, has actually been helping me kind of nail that down. I had a version of it. It was a little bit unreliable. We fixed it now, so it is reliable. So you just do stuff and then you rewind, and then you can change your plan, or you can give an order to a different unit. So, like, simultaneous coordination and prediction and learning the systems are all rolled into one. So I'm hoping that will just make emergence better. You'll just see more possibilities, discover more things just by experimentation, and B, make the tutorialization process way easier, which is good because I want to do this extra thing with tutorials where I'm trying to teach you to be creative, to try and get you in a creative mindset. And like resetting a turn is not as small a jump as rewinding a half second in Shadwen, but it's good enough. I'll tell you how to think of it is it's not about how much time you reset, it's about how much work you're undoing. And the work right now for giving an agent an order, right now it's literally one click. It will be 2 clicks. It's going to be click once to tell them where you want to go, then click another time to tell them who you want them to attack. And maybe if you want to switch weapons or something, you do that in there as well. So at most 3 button presses. And even more than that, you haven't lost them. If they worked when you go back, they're still there. All that orders are still programmed in, and you can tweak them or redo them if you want. So I think that's going to work. I think that's going to be good. It feels like all these different things, big lessons I've learned, are all coming together in the same thing. And the only question is, like, how easy is it to get a core game in there, like the actual mechanics of defeating enemies and what skills you use on them. There's some stuff in there now. It's not enough. It has moments of feeling really good, but it also feels kind of claustrophobic and messy right now. So I've got to figure out the solution to that. But I'm pretty excited that I'm on the right track, or at least I'm exploring a space that's worth exploring. I haven't seen these things put together before, and I have really strong sense that these things belong together. So I want to find out what happens when they are together.